It is not changing at all.
Yeah,
actually, once you let me
Jessica.
talk, it's completely consistent.
Okay.
Now it's Admiral Bradley's fault, and I presume that he's getting lawyered up right now.
No. Prediction, nothing will come of this.
Yeah.
Kayleigh?
What you just witnessed with Jessica's explanation here is Democrats in search of their next hoax, their next scandal. Let me break this down for you, because this happens all the time.
Democrat
and Trump
scandal
administration
monger.
won. No, he was referring to the fact the laws of war as if the Washington Post story was true. The Washington Post story is not true. Let me break it down, because we dealt with this in Trump administration 1. Buried down in the Washington Post story is the Department of Defense saying that the story is completely false. So you say, okay, what's the Washington Post going on? They say they've talked to 7 people familiar with the situation. You're like, oh, whoa, 7?
The most revealing moments in political debate are rarely the loud ones. They're the moments when the facts quietly undercut the story being sold. Welcome back to World Insight Hub. If you're not yet subscribed, make sure you do. It genuinely helps this channel continue breaking down the narratives shaping our politics. In this exchange, watch how quickly the ground shifts. Kayleigh McEnany doesn't push back with emotion. She goes straight for the detail everyone else avoided. The Pentagon itself disputes the claim, and the dramatic storyline built on multiple sources suddenly contracts into a single anonymous assertion. That's when the confidence fades and the narrative starts to unravel.
Bottom of the ocean. How is that a war crime?
Well, it's a war crime, and we didn't play any Republicans, but there were plenty of them that have been talking about, like John Yoo, who was the architect of the Bush 9/11 response, was talking about this as well, that if there are people who are shipwrecked, which is what these 2 survivors were.
Survivors?
They survived the first strike.
Jessica. They're not survivors.
Okay.
They're victims.
You know,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
that's how the DOD manual says that you have to do it, that you have to take them, you should send a helicopter to get them out of there, and then you try them. Or international law also says that as well. You could play Roger Wicker talking about it, Senator Tom Tillis, Mike Turner. These are all Republicans saying it. So the narrative that this is about the left getting all hot and bothered about another hoax is absolutely ludicrous.
Can I just ask you one question?
No, you can't, actually. You already
Please,
asked me a question.
insist.
No, I insist
What
you
happens
stop.
if we hit a terrorist?
Listen,
and the terrorist
we
survives?
know-
We're supposed to send a helicopter to rescue him
We know-
and then give him first aid?
We know that this isn't
Jessica,
a hoax,
yes or
because
no?
a best case scenario is that Admiral Bradley, who they're trying to put all the blame on, is the one who authorized the second lethal strike that took out these people who, again, it was a violation of the law that they were killed. We also know that the U.S. doesn't always do this, because there was another strike in the Caribbean back in September where a Colombian and an Ecuadorian person survived, and we repatriated them home. We didn't even take them to court here for the crimes that we knew that they'd committed. We sent them back to their home country. There is tons of reporting now. You want to call the Washington Post fake news, that's fine. The New York Times story, by the way, didn't exonerate them. We also have the Wall Street Journal saying that a DOD official says that Hegseth was the, quote, target engagement authority, so the guy in charge. We also know, writ large, that the story about this administration being focused on eradicating American society of drugs is absolute BS, because Donald Trump went and pardoned, he's walking free now, the former Honduran president who trafficked 400 tons of cocaine into America. Why did he get to leave prison early? He had a 45-year sentence, which, by the way, Trump administration #1 prosecuted him because Roger Stone is his buddy, and because he wrote Donald Trump a letter calling him Your Excellency and saying that they shared conservative values. The problem is the story is changing every 10 minutes. It went from fake news to the frog shooting narco terrorists to it is not changing at all.
Yeah,
actually, once you let me
Jessica.
talk, it's completely consistent.
Okay.
Now it's Admiral Bradley's fault, and I presume that he's getting lawyered up right now.
No. Prediction, nothing will come of this.
Yeah.
Kayleigh?
What you just witnessed with Jessica's explanation here is Democrats in search of their next hoax, their next scandal. Let me break this down for you, because this
John
happens
Yoo,
all the time.
Democrat
and Trump
scandal
administration
monger.
won. No, he was referring to the fact the laws of war as if the Washington Post story was true. The Washington Post story is not true. Let me break it down, because we dealt with this in Trump administration 1. Buried down in the Washington Post story is the Department of Defense saying that the story is completely false. So you say, okay, what's the Washington Post going on? They say they've talked to 7 people familiar with the situation. You're like, oh, whoa, 7 people agreed on this? That's huge. That's a lot of people. Oh, wait. Well, 2 people said there was a second strike. There was a second strike. We know that. You get down to brass tacks. They have one source. According to one source, the order was to kill everybody. One source. So on one source, the Washington Post runs with a story. Then you bring in the New York Times. The New York Times spoke to 5 people familiar with the matter. What did the 5 people say? Each official said Mr. Hegseth's directive did not specifically address what should happen if a first missile turned out not to fully accomplish all of the things. As the operation unfolded, they said Hegseth did not give any further orders to the effect of what the Washington Post said. So it's debunked by 5 sources at the New York Times. The Washington Post runs with one story, and then you have the Democrat, you have the left, you have Jessica swooping in saying, this is a big scandal, let's impeach. This is the anatomy of a hit job. We saw it all the time 4 years ago. I mean, I remember being at the podium and they asked me, what about this Walter Reed visit from 2019? What happened during that Walter Reed visit, I was asked. And I outright said, this is a conspiracy theory. But they tried it then. And here's round 2. Katie Rogers at the New York Times, shorter days, signs of fatigue. Trump faces realities of aging in office. It is so bogus. And when you read the piece, she goes in and says his eyelids drooped until they were almost closed. I mean, I watched your eyelids droop, Greg. You're in fine health. You're fine vitality.
Whenever Jesse talks, it's just like involuntary.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But the New York Times flashback, though, I mean, they were talking about the cheap fakes. They bought into that narrative. I have a headline here in front of me, how misleading videos are trailing Biden as he battles his age doubts. So this is what they do. They're trying it again.
What becomes clear in this exchange is how quickly a confident argument can lose its footing the moment someone examines what it's actually resting on. A narrative may sound polished and authoritative, but once the supporting facts are questioned, its strength often turns out to be far more fragile than it appeared. Jessica Tarlov presents her case with complete certainty, structured, assertive, and framed as though several institutions stand firmly behind it. It creates the impression of something established, something already proven. But Kayleigh McEnany doesn't react to the presentation. She goes straight to the substance. Instead of engaging with the emotion, she follows the trail back to the details most people overlook. And it's there, beneath the surface, that the storyline shifts. The sweeping claim that sounded so definitive contracts into a single anonymous allegation, and even the Pentagon itself rejects the premise being pushed. That's when the tone of the conversation changes. Because moments like this reveal something deeper. How easily certainty can be constructed, and how quickly it unravels when the evidence behind it is actually inspected. Dramatic language can mask weak foundations, but only until someone asks the right question. This isn't about personalities or performance. It's about the way narratives are formed, repeated, and defended long before their underlying facts are fully tested. And when that testing finally happens, the contrast between confidence and accuracy becomes impossible to ignore. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you, and what do you think this moment really reveals? Thanks for watching World Insight Hub. Stay sharp, stay curious, and don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe. See you next time.